Meeting is now called to order. Start with the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start with the public audience. Any members of the public? Ms. Coe.
Yeah, Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. A couple of things I want to discuss. First of all, my personal feeling is that if we should start at the top, the town manager, if that's what you want to put into the charter, that should be the first thing, and then work your way down with other things. What kind of management you're going to have, who's the executive officer, and then you could sort of skew other things to it. But I also feel strongly that if you're going to change the form of government, and you're going to go through a big change with the change in the form of government, that you shouldn't put so many things out in the charter. Because once you start adding different pieces, like planning and zoning and education and this and term limits and everything else, you get people who are voting saying, I don't like one thing, and they vote it down. I think the less you put in, it can always change things later, but you give them one, if that's what you're going to do as town manager, that's a big change, and people really have to look at it and discuss it. And all the other things you're putting in are really side issues. So I think you ought to start at the top and decide just how much you're going to put into the charter, instead of mucking it up and changing everything and having people upset with a small portion that could vote something down. And then you still don't know why it was voted down. And so that's just my input, that the more you put in, the less you'll get as far as a result.
Okay. Is there anything else? Or?
No, I think
okay.
I'll save my other comments for another time.
Okay. I'm sure you'll have some.
I have them all the time.
Please.
I'm Carl.
I have a point of order question,
Yes.
but the town attorney's not here. We are not limited to one question on the referendum, are we?
No.
Yeah, that would be the answer to that concern.
Yeah.
I'm Carl Meyer. I'm one of 10 or 12 people who you have emails in your packets, who wrote in about wanting term limits for the Board of Ed. That's all I have. I mean, I won't make the case, everyone made a different case or a similar case.
Okay.
And you have it all. I'm just saying who I am.
Thank you. Any other?
Your address.
7 Deepwood. 7 Deepwood,
Thanks.
Any
0607.
other members of the public? I don't see anyone. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get unanimous consent for switching around the agenda. We have Mickey LaCours-Beck, if I pronounce that right, is here from the town, and she is going to be discussing the Human Relations Commission. So I'd like to get that first, as long as she's here, instead of having her wait around to see through everything else. Any objection?
No
objection. Fine, thank you. Let's start with that. Do you have something to present to us, please? And if you can come up to the table, it might be a little bit better. Thank you.
Can I have your name and address?
Yeah, Mickey LaCours-Beck,
And how do you spell?
LECOURS-BECK,
You, Tom? No, Tom DeCusha.
Social Services.
Thanks.
Basically, I had suggested, when asked, that you might want to consider eliminating the Human Relations Commission, and the biggest reason is they don't meet. When I checked with, and I don't know that this is correct, but when I checked with the town clerk's office, I was told that the ordinance for this commission was adopted in 1993. That could be correct. And as far as I know, at least as far as my involvement, they didn't meet until 2008. And they met until 2011. So they met for 3 years and they haven't met since. And there's 3 members of the, that were appointed to this commission, and only 2 ever showed up, even for those 3 years. And although we did do a few things, we held an event called Stand Against Racism. We had Speak Up booklets and 10 Ways to Fight Hate. And we also ordered a number of bracelets and magnets that were, that had a message, anti-discrimination or message on it, like tolerate difference and things like that. But then we were discussing that a lot of what we were doing in social services and the senior center were kind of addressing the issue of discrimination. And just a couple of things, we started a Muslim American peace group here in town because we became aware of a number of Muslims that lived in this town. We also started buying a number of, again, the bracelets, the things for the high school and the junior high that discuss tolerance. And we're also doing a number of LGBT trainings and programming at the senior center. So that's basically my case. They just weren't, they aren't, and they weren't reading. So I just offer that for you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions at all on the board?
I have a question.
I should actually start with Mary. What would you like to say, and then go to everybody else, right?
Thank you, Nikki. Good to see you. Just wondering, is the Human Relations Commission function incorporated in another? I mean, those are all great initiatives that you talked about. So, is the function of the Human Relations Commission being folded and done by other folks, or is it a question of do we need to redefine what the Human Relations Commission needs to do?
Well, that's a good point. Maybe that's exactly what needs to be done. They couldn't get there. You know, I think the mission, which I'm sure you have in front of you, is just very, very broad. It's basically elimination of all discrimination. I mean, wouldn't that be a great world to live in? I think, you know, activities toward that goal is great, but I just think it's so broad that it's hard to get your arms wrapped around that, and especially for two people. I mean, I was just their advisor, sort of, but we only had 2 members.
So if just one more follow-up, if there were, I mean, there's certainly so many social needs. You talked about some of them, discrimination, sexual discrimination. Is there a need to have a group of volunteers focused on some other task or goal? Would it be worthwhile? You know, because there's a lot of things we can think about. Should we just get rid of the whole commission because they're not meeting, or should we redefine what is needed and substitute that in its place?
You know, I mean, you can't turn your back on the mission and say, yeah, it's not needed anymore. I mean, it's needed. Maybe just redefining it, or maybe putting it on another, an existing commission, like Aging and Disabilities. I don't, you know, it's possible that could fit in that. Or just redefining this and making it, keeping it, but just redefining it, and maybe making more appointments to it.
What I think I remember at the last meeting when we talked about this, there was a question as to whether there was state statute that required a Human Relations Commission. Bob, do you recall whether that was the case? Were we able to determine that?
Yeah, I have a memo or a letter to that effect. Would you like it now?
Yes. Yeah.
You have copies for everybody, Bob?
Yes.
Okay, great, yeah. And then you emailed one to me today.
Oh, you have a
What?
letter. You have a letter. We don't have a letter. We don't have a letter.
Big shame.
Yeah, I see one.
Not 11, so she did notice.
I just got it. Thank you.
The quick answer is it's not required. 7-148I allows municipalities to form human relations commissions, does not require them to do so. And there's a case in sight there that says that prior to the adoption of that act in 1980, municipalities had no authority to establish a commission. So what that says to me is that statute controls. And then I offer 3 alternatives, there's really 4. The 4th one being don't do anything. The first would be eliminate, take it out of the charter entirely. Second would be add it to another commission. Third would be take it out and reconstitute it as an ordinance. There's some logic to that, because then you can change its responsibilities more easily than you can in the charter as the situations arise. The big issue here is the CHRO, state agency, really undertakes a lot of
Stimulates the mind.
enforcement obligations that a human relations commission would otherwise do. So you've got really 4 options: do nothing, eliminate it, incorporate it somewhere else, or eliminated the idea of doing without this ordinance. A lot of logic to the ordinance part.
Okay.
This is just for point of clarification. Does ordinance mean becomes a law, becomes something that,
Yeah, an ordinance, it'd be in the book of ordinances, it's a local enactment, a local regulation, but it's not in the charter. So
Right.
you can, amending an ordinance requires a public hearing, but it doesn't require a charter revision. More easily tailored to what's going on.
but as an ordinance, we would say this is what, this is what it should be within this town, and, but it doesn't necessarily have to be part of, you say, not part of the charter
It does
itself.
not have to be part of the charter.
Is there a predominant precedence by other towns for this issue?
I think most of them are created by charter, by ordinance.
They are.
In fact, the statute says, they put a copy of the statute on the letter there. Any town may adopt a code of prohibited practices and may establish or designate any town by charter or ordinance. It gives the town options. The idea of the charter is, of course, is it added permanence. That's where the Design Review Board and Open Space Commission were both added to the charter to give it that sanctity of added permanence. But in this particular case, given its history, you may want to go in the opposite direction and make it more of a flexible tool than a.
Melissa, did you?
So-
Sure.
Melissa's next.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Mickey, just a question. I'm kind of torn in two directions on this because as I look at the wording of the charter provision, I noticed that, it's a little dated. It doesn't include any of the LGBT language. There's no gender orientation or sexual orientation language in there, which, at first glance, I would seek to expand that language. But then I hear that, people don't actually come. And yet I'm torn. I don't want to send the message of taking away a human relations committee or commission from a town like Simsbury, from any town. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on, you said, it needed to be narrowed. How would you narrow that, given your interaction with it?
Well, I certainly take out the things that talk about investigating and mediating complaints.
Okay.
That's not something that,
That's CHRO
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
and EEOC at the federal level. So between those two, that's where you go to investigate. They have a staff, investigatory arm, doing that.
A lot of these.
So you'd be more comfortable, I'm sorry, may I?
Yeah.
You'd be more comfortable with language that said something to foster greater awareness or tolerance or, for diversity such as that type of language?
The basic anti-discrimination,
Absolutely.
it lists everything. And I think even if you went with the ordinance, it would be like a statement, a town statement that we don't discriminate.
Right.
So I think and that way you could include all of those things. And then if you also wanted to keep it as a commission, you could just, add to that. But again, I think
Yeah,
it's going
sure.
to be hard to get people to attend.
Just to follow up, Mr. Town Attorney, is there any prohibition to creating a commission or altering the existing commission provisions to be a commission that meets at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen? But, so the Board of Selectmen could set the meeting agenda, the meeting schedule, and yet we wouldn't take it out of the charter. It would still have the recognition and force of a charter authorized commission.
If you took it out of the charter as a permanent commission, you could, the Board of Selectmen always has the opportunity every 2 years to create temporary and special commissions, like the Design Review Board used to be. You
Right.
could also rewrite it so that it meets at the call of the Board of Selectmen.
That was my inquiry. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, Paul's next.
okay, so if we did take it out of the charter, we could then move it over to an ordinance, right? And then, if the Board of Selectmen felt they needed to do something, or one of the other boards or commissions, they could do so, right? So that would meet it, through CHRO, and also, we've got the power of the EEOC, basically the federal government behind it as well.
That's correct.
Okay. Which, in a way, the way I read this, sort of, that may not have, or the strength, or may not have been there when this was adopted back in, what'd you say, 1992?
93.
93. Okay, thank you.
Anita?
I would like to make this discussion much bigger and apply it, take a look at a lot of other commissions that are in the charter. I think that from time to time, it's very easy to add commissions and add committees and add task forces and add whatever, and then to shrink them down and pull back and concentrate your efforts becomes very nasty. It becomes unpolitical, and it becomes, people who are serving in those positions might take them personally. And I think somebody's got to do it. And I think maybe this is the group that should do that we should take a look at a lot of commissions and committees,
Well, I know that.
especially the ones that are in the charter, because that's our charge.
Right.
And ask them, basically, what have you done for me lately? And is there really a necessity to eat up incredible amounts of staff time, sending staff to all of these meetings that are mostly at night? And then, there may be compensatory time given to the staff people. It may be a smarter thing to do just to simply give staff responsibility for some of these things than to have commissions responsible for all of them.
Well, I know one of the items that's going to come up on a future agenda is looking at all the permanent committees.
Well, that's
Yeah.
basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I know, I
Yeah,
know, I'm saying, so
yeah.
that's already in the works.
So we could make this part of all of that.
What I'd probably like to do, why don't we try and focus on this one now, because she's here, and maybe we can take care of this, and if we want to put it in abeyance, we can add it on to the grand list, as it were, the larger list.
Yeah, I think it may take time to do the big list, because
Oh, I'm sure, well, that's.
we're going to have to ask questions of those commissions
lot of-
and give them
yeah.
time for response.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's down the road. There, I have kind of a little order that I have set up.
All right,
on
I
this. We'll
didn't
get-
realize that.
Yeah, no, I'm getting there. All right, please.
Another question, just to follow up. So going back to, Bob, your memo on our options, I'm looking at number 2, transferring or delegating to another agency. In section 607, it's Aging and Disability Commission. Would they have enough, they do great work, I'm familiar with their work. Could it be aging, discrimination, and disability, or do they have too much to focus on? Would that be a natural place to fold it in?
Well, as you were just talking, I was just thinking, another, and this is close to your heart, another, it's not a commission, but the Community for Care would be another avenue for this. So it might actually fit better there. I don't know what you think about that, but.
I was thinking the same thing, that's why I was asking your opinion, because there are two groups that are very active looking at important issues, so there are places to go.
What I see is if an incident happened in Simsbury and we wanted to address it, that's when I think, and that's the value of having something like this, that you can suddenly, everybody gets together. But I think it could be handled through the Community for Care.
The only concern about the Community for Care is it's a temporary board and commission, so it's not a town group, it's a board of selectmen appointed group with community members. It's not a town appointed group to focus on town issues. That's why I thought the Human Relations Commission is a town appointed, board of selectmen appointed, very limited. Community for Care is more volunteer based. So if you were folding those things into some other commission, would that be a logical one?
Anybody else? Please, John.
Yeah, Melissa, I hear you loud and clear. I think your point is well taken about the laudable goals here, and you don't want to take something out, but we have a situation where the board's supposed to appoint 3 members of this commission. There's only 2 on there, right? I'm assuming the board selectman liaison is not one of the appointed people.
No, there was 3.
But there's 2, and I pulled it up today.
Well, yeah, there is a vacancy. That's since.
And then I read this language, and the language is very laudable, there's no question about that. Who would disagree with that? But when you start saying that this commission has a duty to do things, and we sit here, or the town sits here, and they haven't done anything since 2011, to me, that's a warning that says, well, wait a second, if we're mandating that you have a duty to do something and nothing happens, that's a seriously broke commission. If there's no compelling interest to join this commission, we have problems finding people, and there's numerous agencies, including the police department, that do all this stuff. I don't think we should have a commission like this. I don't see the value of it, so that's where I look at it.
If we're looking at moving it to an ordinance, but we're only dealing with the charter, how do we enact that?
You make a recommendation.
You recommend to shift it over to an ordinance.
In the report, you send to the Board of Selectmen, you would recommend elimination of the commission and urge them to enact an ordinance to replace it.
Mickey, I just had one question. You've mentioned that the commission had a couple of initiatives on their own, whether it was bracelets or sending out flyers, whatever. Have they ever been responding directly to a complaint? Are they proactive? Are they reactive? Has anybody come to this body and said, hey, we need help for whatever reason?
No, and that's why, you mentioned the police department and social services. We're always trying to come up with different ideas, especially for the high school and junior high, to promote diversity.
Right.
So that's going to be ongoing anyway.
Yeah.
In the last 5 or so years, I can think of at least one CHRO complaint we received, maybe 2, and there was never any thought by the complainant to take it to the human rights. I think people who believe they have a grievance that needs to be addressed in this area who seek counsel are always told about the CHRO and at the same time EEOC. EEOC will or will not take it. I don't think it's EEOC that might have to report complaints. Some have to do with inadequate provisions made in programs for different conditions, that sort of thing. But I don't think it's ever been on anyone's list to take it to human relations.
Mary?
I had a good idea after a note from Carl Meyer was passed to me. If we were to go the route of taking out the charter and calling it something else, there's a suggestion to call a commission to promote diversity in Simsbury. So I thought that was a good suggestion. And I'll share that with you.
It's more proactive than reactive.
Right.
Exactly.
Any other questions or comments? Does anybody want to make a motion at all? Anita?
Well, I just had a comment.
Sure.
Maybe I'll make a motion.
Okay,
But-
I'll let you do
Don't mind
both.
if I do both? The comment is that we are not turning our backs on the mission at all by doing this, because there are so many groups in town that take part in this. Churches do this. I think it's interesting you mentioned the police commission, because we have school resource officers also who work on that project. We have so many groups. I know years ago I took part in something called the Community Conversation on Race, and it was sponsored by the Hartford Current, maybe, or somebody. Anyway, we had our meetings at the CLNP office, and it was together with Bloomfield people. And there are lots of things like that that go on a continuing basis. And I think these people haven't been meeting just because the general population sees it as a responsibility, which is a wonderful thing, rather than to just say these 2 people should do it for us. So I would like to move that we recommend elimination of the commission and let the Board of Selectmen proceed as they wish beyond that.
Second.
Okay, we have a second.
Who's second?
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the Board of Selectmen receives the memo from Bob, so they know that they will have some options once it's out of this charter, so that if they wish to pursue the ordinance, they can.
Yeah, that's it. Melissa, were you?
I'm uncomfortable with leaving it as open-ended as let the Board of Selectmen proceed as they wish. I think that we need to send a message that this is still a valued, a Simsbury value. I think that we need something more than the open-ended, let them proceed as they wish. It would be my suggestion to offer the suggestions of, revising it to a town ordinance, something particular that states that we still value this and we still want it as part of the official Simsbury laws, regulations, wherever we put
Consider
it.
making it an ordinance. thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're not going to have it in the charter, I would be more comfortable with Simsbury having an official statement about it, such as in an ordinance.
Point of order. Or actually, this is directed to Anita. Is it, and to the chairman, is it possible to take two votes on that? One, to take it out of the charter, and the second, that we make a recommendation to the...
We could make it
to the
be just,
selectmen
it could be
that-
one
That they
vote.
consider adopting an ordinance?
Yeah, no, we can make it as one motion, that we recommend taking it out of the
Well, no,
charter.
I was directing that
I could-
at
I
Anita.
could
as-
Well, I'm saying, assuming...
I could move to amend.
Assuming Anita's amenable to it, okay, we could amend it to say that we recommend taking it out of the charter, however, we also recommend establishing it as an ordinance.
Well, that's
But
why I
that
was
would be
directing it at
depending on
Anita.
whether
Right.
Anita
She
wants
wants
to
to
go
be
with that.
amenable to a motion to amend your...
I made this long prelude or preamble to my motion, and are we not going to include a paragraph explaining our choices when we do our letter to the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, we're going to include that as part of the record, but by the same token, if we want to push them in a direction, we should probably have that as part of our recommendation.
Why do we need an ordinance? I don't understand. What
well-
would the ordinance say?
It doesn't say they have to, it says consider.
Yeah, but what would the ordinance say? Why would we have to pass an ordinance at all?
It could track the language of the existing commission section. It could expand it. It could focus more on proactive measures like promoting diversity. It could be any number of things.
But I don't understand. Then would you be creating another temporary commission?
No, it could be a permanent commission.
So why are we eliminating this one?
Well, because with an ordinance, if you think about it, this is an area that evolves rather quickly these days. If you think about the discussions we would have about this 10 years ago, it's much different than the discussions we have today in terms of the issues that you would address through a commission like this. And an ordinance would allow the Board of Selectmen to adapt it to the times, so to speak, as issues arise much more easily than amending the charter. But
The Board of Selectmen has the opportunity at any point to establish any temporary commission, whenever anything comes up. So to my point about maybe pulling back and making things a little bit smaller and a little bit more manageable, I don't think I want to tell the Board of Selectmen how to proceed on this. I think they're the Board of Selectmen. Let them figure it out.
Understand.
Fair enough. You convinced me.
You've been there.
Any other comments, Earl? So what we're going to be voting on is to eliminate this commission. Okay, we will include the list of possible options that the Board of Selectmen could look at, or the Board of Select people can look at. Okay? And we'll go from there.
That's not the motion, though.
That was,
Her motion was an open-ended motion to let them do as they would, as they think, right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
But I'm not writing the transmittal letter. And things like that can be in a transmittal letter that are less formal.
okay. And we'll include a copy of Bob's memo.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising hands. All those opposed? Thank you. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. 8, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank you, Mickey. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vicki.
Okay. Okay, next, discussion on the charge related to the term of office for boards and commissions, which is kind of
We
relevant.
approved the minutes?
What? Oh, you know?
We approved the minutes?
No, we didn't. I am sorry. You're right. I got distracted. Does anybody have any comments or corrections on the minutes of the 29th?
They look good to
Do we
me.
have 2 minutes to read them?
Yeah, oh, sure. Okay.
Did we get these by email?
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
I looked for them. I couldn't find them.
I run into that sometimes, too, for some reason. I have trouble with that.
Anita, if I may, one of the solutions, I have a hard time getting into the town email system through work. It's blocked, and I'm not allowed to do it. So one of the things I asked Tom to do was send it not only to the town email, but also to my my AOL
Yeah.
account.
That'd be
Can you
great.
get on
May I
the
have a chance to
Simsbury-
open
Can
it
you get
up?
on the Simsbury town site?
What's that?
It's posted on the Simsbury town site too, under the minutes.
The minutes were, but there were some other things too that go along with it. Right, right, not just the
Attachments,
minutes.
et cetera. Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Well, I did get onto my email with the town. And I looked for the minutes and I couldn't find them, so.
They're hiding.
They were
I am
hiding
not the best person to do this, but
Just the last minute.
They weren't there the first time I looked either. They were-
I had them at both. Actually.
They have to be posted. Been there. Couldn't hold the meeting. Posted in time.
There you go, right.
After
Yeah.
Everybody ready? Okay. Any corrections to the minutes at all? No? Accepted? No objection? No. Good, thank you. Okay, we are back to discussion and possible action on charge related to terms of office for boards and commissions. There's nobody here from the town to put their 2 cents in. Does anybody want to start the discussion at all? Does anybody have any suggestions of their own or comments of their own?
Well, I wonder, excuse me, yeah,
Sure.
I wonder if Bob made a statement
Mhm.
last time that
About-
sounded like a suggestion that it possibly we shouldn't be pursuing that, or I
No,
misunderstood.
that was about the term limits. This is, I think, about changing the terms. This is the way I read it. This is about changing the terms of office. For example, you might want to...
All right, I'm with you.
Yeah. So I'll throw one out there if nobody else wants to start. I absolutely think that the Board of Selectmen should be a 4-year term and not a 2-year term. I think, at least from my experience, and obviously everybody has their own, but by the time you get done running and get in and start figuring out how things are supposed to be done, you turn around, you're running for office again. And I think that people who have those short terms of office tend to be much more concerned about how it's going to affect the next election than looking a little bit further down the road. So my suggestion would be, I would recommend changing the terms of the Board of Selectmen to be 4 years as opposed to 2. That's my feeling on it. So I'll throw that out.
So to Joan's earlier point, to the extent that if there's a decision to move forward on a town manager, would your opinion change?
No, I don't think so. I would still keep that term as 4 years. That's my feeling. I'm very big on that, actually, for whatever that's worth.
I don't necessarily disagree with what you just said. I think the point that we have to have a discussion as to whether we're going to have a town manager. Are we going to have, if we have a town manager, do we have a town council? Do we have a board of selectmen? What do we do? I would think that we would want to get that piece out of the way first, and then decide, what we want to do. If we decide we want to keep the first selectman, then I think it's certainly appropriate to have a discussion. Do we have a 4-year term for the first selectman? Do we have then a 2-year term or 4-year for the selectman? I don't disagree with you at all about, the fact that, you do it for 2 years, then you're running almost the day after the election. But I think we need to decide that big issue first, and then go and say, okay, what should it be? So that would be my opinion.
Actually, Bob, I have a question, because I was thinking about this afternoon. We are going to submit a report to the board, and it's going to have X recommendations on it. Now, the board does not have to accept all of them, and doesn't have to put all of them out for a referendum or to a vote by the town. Is that correct? So the question then becomes, let's say, and it's purely hypothetical, let's say we want a town manager. And because we want the town manager, we think that then the duties of the first select person are going to change. And we include that. Now, let's say the board says, we don't want a town manager. We're not putting that on the ballot, but we're going to put the duties of the first select person would still change. We're still going to throw that out there. So my question is there any way to do it that if we want, we'll say that if they accept the recommendation on town manager, then we're recommending X. If they don't accept that, then we're recommending Y. Because one, it's kind of a tree, and it's going to branch off, and depending on what they put forward, some might not jibe with what's out there.
The scenario you just laid out, they'd have to send the report back to the commission and recommend a change to the report.
Okay.
The commission can say, okay, we'll do it, or no, we won't, and then send it back to the board of selectmen, and then they decide. The draft charter that goes to referendum, if any, has to come from the commission. They can't amend it.
Okay.
Back to the commission, to the commission's amendments.
I was a little unclear on that.
For that reason, you can't, it's not a Chinese menu situation. If you change one element of the charter, it runs all through every section, really.
Okay. Okay, so the eventual report that comes out of the commission, kind of in toto, goes before the public.
Well, through the board of selectmen.
Right, yeah.
They choose to send it to the board.
Right.
And they can't amend your.
They can't pick and choose. They can come back.
Recommend back to you.
Right.
To make
To
a
eliminate
choice.
something or change something, but eventually it's, okay.
And if you can't agree, they just don't send it to referendum.
Okay. Okay, fine, thank you. Okay.
Who generated this question? Where did it come from in the charge?
Could I speak? Because I think,
Just 1 second. I'm sorry, just let Anita finish up here.
I just wondered where this came from.
I think I can
because
answer that question.
Well, are we going to
if-
have public audience now? I thought we had public audience.
We had public audience already, unfortunately, yeah.
When I was on the commission 2 commissions ago, 10 years ago, we did rejigger a lot of these because we didn't touch the Board of Selectmen, but and we couldn't touch the Board of Finance and the Board of Library Trustees because that's per state statute. But there were, I think, 6-year terms on a lot of the land use commissions.
Correct.
Yeah, and we reduced them all to 4 to make greater accountability. And I think you had quite a job to shove all the pieces around on the board to make it all
Really
come out
sweat
right.
out that first election.
Yeah.
Carol would tell me it worked out okay. Because all the staggering had to be done in such a way that people who came up for reelection, I mean, more people would come up for reelection than otherwise would be the case because the 6 years came forward. It was a job.
Well, especially because you had to be careful not to take away anybody's term to which they'd already been elected.
That you couldn't do that.
Right, you couldn't do that. So you can't just change everything instantly. It had to be staggered over years. So I don't want to touch any of those, especially under B for a term of 4 years, that section. That's what we redid at that point. I think it's working, and I would recommend leaving alone. And we can't touch C, so the only one really to discuss would be the Board of Selectmen.
And for that, you just elected a board of selectmen for a 2-year term, so you couldn't make a 4-year term effective. You'd have to elect people to a 4-year term, and have to be effective at the next.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
And would we stagger those?
could.
And how would you,
You could stagger it, but
Yeah.
the problem with that is you run into minority representation issues pretty quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and you need an answer to your question. I think the person who really knows that answer is Tom. What happened is when we started out, I was given a list of the X number of items that were supposed to be revisited or for the first time. And they came from various sources. So I don't know specifically where that one came from. I don't know whether it was a staff recommendation or Tom's recommendation or Bob's. I don't know whose it was. So we'd have to ask Tom that.
Well, I only want to know because I want to know the rationale behind the question.
Oh, sure, no, that makes
Where-
sense, that makes
who
sense.
the person
And
is, but.
Paul's
yeah.
point was good about this as well. What I think we'll do, because we haven't spent too much time on this yet, the next meeting is when we're going to take up the town manager, okay? And one of the reasons, there are about half dozen items that I knew automatically flowed from that. You know, the responsibilities of first select person, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to go to town manager next. We can fold this back in later on, because we haven't wasted a lot of time on it. So if there's no objection to that, we will just...
Are you suggesting that we make the decision at the next meeting?
No, I'm suggesting we're going to discuss, we're going to
Just start the
discuss it.
discussion.
We're going to start, and it
All
might
right.
take
That's
more
the
than one
12th.
meeting.
Is that the 12th?
That's, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's the 12th.
It is 19th?
19th?
I think I might be in.
Okay.
Yeah, I might not be here either.
Okay.
I might not be here
But
either.
we'll start, anybody else know
Well,
they're
we
not
have a
going to, we're going to have a
quorum.
quorum?
Next meeting's the 19th.
19th?
If you have a quorum and you want to start the discussion.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable having a vote on something.
Yeah. So, but we can certainly get it started, because I have a feeling it's going to be more than a one-meeting discussion anyway.
Hadley, can I request that we have somebody from the Economic Development Commission here, or task force, for that discussion? Because one of the things that was mentioned in their report that we received
Right.
was one of the things to consider was to reduce, they have a 5-year term. One of their considerations was whether their term should be reduced in order to attract more people who'd be willing to serve on that commission, because it's a
Okay.
5-year term, it's a lengthy commitment.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to know what you think about it.
Yeah, we can do that.
They also recommend changes to the duties of the first selectman, which would tie into our discussion.
Yes.
No, there are a number of things that flow out of if we recommend a change either way, whichever way we want to go.
Right.
A number of issues flow out of that.
I said this question to Tom, but didn't check my town email before I got here, so I
Okay.
don't know. Do we know whether the report we received was final? My copy had a bunch of red lines through it. Do we know if it went to the Board of Selectmen? Was it accepted by them?
Which report was that?
The economic,
That we received.
the one that we requested last time?
Task force.
The task force.
That was part of the handout.
Answer that, Tom gave you that.
Oh,
email, and he- Yeah,
okay.
he responded to that.
I didn't
right
see it 'cause
before-
I hadn't-
Yeah, it was like right before this meeting. It was final, it is final.
It is
That
final.
the final version
With the red lines.
has added the red line, but that is.
Final red line version.
Final red line
Exactly.
version.
It hasn't been, I think it's gonna be presented to the Board of Selectmen on Monday night,
Oh,
this Monday.
Okay, so they haven't accepted it yet.
They've not accepted it.
okay.
Okay, got it.
And I think that's the word, I don't think it's not approval, I believe it is.
Accepted, right. Okay.
While we're asking about reports.
Sure.
There was a report done by a personnel consultant that resulted in the recommendation that a certain first selectman's salary be lowered.
I remember that.
Anybody else familiar with that?
Copies of that report, because that talked about the town manager and different job responsibilities for those positions. I think we need that report for
Sure.
our discussion.
Especially since the Economic Task Force report recommends increasing the duties of the first selectman.
It's confusing, isn't it?
It is.
More work, less pay.
I don't need a copy, I've already read it.
I haven't seen it at all.
Personnel one? Personnel
Yeah,
thing?
the personnel.
Oh.
Are there more reports that would be pertinent? Do you know about any?
I don't recall, unless the last Tory revision had any reports on that issue, but I don't recall.
No, the last charter division commission had a bunch of testimony on
That's what I thought.
Sean, could you speak to Tom and make sure we get a copy of that report earlier, sooner rather
Yeah.
than later?
Especially if it's big.
It's a little tough to walk into this, you know?
Absolutely.
A recommendation I had made early on, maybe it was at the first meeting, was that perhaps at some point we have the chairman or some of the people from the last Charter Revision Commission and maybe the one before that, and just ask them, why did you do certain things? If we're going to look at, a town manager, why didn't you do it? What were your concerns about? I think that might be helpful at some point. Both Rob and Chuck Howard. I think Chuck was the chairman
Yes,
before that, right?
Trying to think of it, and I just did.
Rob Hagney?
Well, Rob Hagney was the last one, and Chuck Howard, I think, was the one before that.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Now you're confusing us.
Okay, I'll speak to Tom about that as well. And I know Tom is lined up for the next meeting, a couple of the people from other towns who are going to be coming along. And, some who, still have the first selectman as a Bland, and some who have gone strictly to town manager. So we'll have some input from some other people on that as well. Bob, you were going to have some language written up about the publications, et cetera, for the budget. Remember, Tom, that you had that question? Remember you talking about you wanted some specific language before we voted on it?
On the ad, or?
Yeah, on the ad or
You
the
did,
presentation.
at your 2 meetings ago, you did take an action to change, to accept the recommendation from the finance director.
Right,
And I-
but there were 2 segments to that, and I think we approved one and didn't approve the other pending language. And so if we can get to that, yeah, because that
What I've
should be
been
fair.
doing, I haven't brought it to you because I don't want to print out a charter every time you make a change.
No, but I'm saying if you just give us an example of the language.
pages.
Yeah, just give us the language for that particular segment
Yeah,
that we were concerned about.
I'll send it out to you electronically, but bring it
Yeah,
next
please.
time. Changed the title page, and I changed the effective pages and the footnote, the date when the change was made, so you can tie it back to the week.
Mhm.
I just did that for the Open Space Committee.
Mhm.
And now I'll do that for the Human Relations Commission, so you have 3 when I send it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, the concern was really about the budget publication, et cetera, so we
Yeah.
could,
I might
so we
need
could
some
sign off on that.
guidance on that, because I did read the minutes, I
Mhm.
was here obviously, but
Right.
I wasn't entirely sure how you wanted to do that. So I'll send out what I've got,
Okay,
and then we'll take it from there.
they'll have something to look at, that'd be great, thank you. Anything else?
I
for now?
request a second public audience. I cared enough to show up, and I didn't take advantage of the first. Only 2.
I'm going to have to, I'll tell you, I'm going to defer on this for a moment because I don't know typically what happens in Simsbury. Is there a second public audience? Or is there
Up
not?
to the
I mean, we're all
Body.
just.
Or is that, it's, okay,
It's a-
yeah, I just want to make sure I do it.
Yeah.
I screw up the little things enough. I want to make sure I do this right. If there's no objection, can we let the gentleman speak? Please.
In a town where 99% of the people, if not more, don't even know you.
Could you just come up a little bit? It's hard to hear you. Thank you.
In a town where 99+% of the people don't even know this commission exists, 10 people wrote in wanting, they didn't care how long the term was, specifically and rationally and logically and professionally and maturely wrote about wanting term limits on the Board of Ed. Now you jumped right over it to the length of the term of Board of Selectmen, which is not at all what anyone wrote about. 10 people wrote in, and no discussion at all. We have a Board of Ed where we have a chairwoman, who I like and respect, and who is completely competent, who's been there 20, 25 years. Others served for life. This is not Cuba. This is the United States. This is not consistent with democracy. The parties appoint people to the Board of Ed, and I understand the rationale behind that was to depoliticize the board. But as someone once told me, it may not be anything more political than having the Democrats and the Republicans appoint people to a board to serve for life. And since 10 people cared enough to write you in a town where no one even knows you exist, I demand, they deserve that this be discussed.
Just to interrupt for a moment, this actually was discussed at our last meeting, and we were advised by the town attorney that term limits don't work. That we can't implement them essentially in Connecticut, and I think there's been some rulings on that. So it's not that we glossed over it tonight, we had already discussed it,
It's something we can't do.
and we're told that we cannot do it.
We actually got a written opinion from the town
Yeah.
attorney.
I believe my opinion was part of the minutes.
No, the last part of the minutes just said, decided.
If you want to
Talk
give
about
me your
this.
email address, I got your email.
Yes.
I'll send you a copy of the opinion.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
happy to
that's
provide
fine.
Mr. Meyer with my copy of the letter and grab a copy from somebody else.
Yeah, but that's why I didn't want you to think we glossed over it,
Not
because it was discussed
specifically
last week.
authorized by statute, but we
Right.
can talk about
Okay,
it.
I'll look at
Also, if I could just, also, SCTV is broadcasting our meetings. And if you want, you can always go out to sctv.org and pull down
Yes,
that
I've
meeting
done
and watch,
that. I
and
will
watch the
do that.
video.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, we did
it was
have,
on the
we did
agenda
have a
for this
discussion
week. I
around
didn't
that.
realize it was on.
Yeah.
And so then I would just close by asking that you find another way. I would ask, and other people want this too, to not have the same people serve for 20, 25 years. It goes back to the statement, some are more equal than others. It's a town of 25,000 people. We should have a mix of ideas on that board. If you watch the meetings, and it's great if they all agree. I like them all, I know them all personally, but too much agreement, for year after year after year. Could be why the budgets are possibly too high. Could be a reason why a lot of things. You need, in a democracy, you need spirited opinions and debates. That's all I was saying.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay, we are adjourned. Okay,
All right.
see you in 2 weeks,
Thank
or
you.
some of you in 2
Woot woot.
weeks.
All's in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All stay.